Basketball fans, welcome to another edition of Raptors Today, featuring the cast of characters of Akil, Sherm Hamilton, and the principal Paul Jones, coming off a big win for the Toronto Raptors. But everybody wants to talk about the story of Pascal Siakam returning, and, of course, a very different-looking starting lineup, gentlemen. We'll start with the starting lineup in Nick Nurse, because that's kind of a developing story with minutes, with injuries. This season's been a difficult one if you are on the coaching staff trying to figure out who can you play at what time and how do you keep this group going. Nick talked about it post-game. He said he was trying to stick with the guys who had rhythm. But did we learn something about possibly a different way this group can go in terms of utilizing bodies and starting lineups and putting some of the better players like Scotty Barnes, Gary Trent came off the bench, and that second unit had life. It had some scores, some high-level scores on it. Did we learn anything about what Nick Nurse can do, or is this something that's more of a blip on the radar, knowing that he had guys coming back? Because he had mentioned that, Jonsey.
I mean, if we've figured it out, that if you put Scotty and Gary in the second unit and they have more pop, don't you think Nick Nurse has figured it out?
So it's not a blip.
It's not.
He talked about it like it kind of was.
Well, I mean, he also talked about not throwing a bunch of guys out there that hadn't played together or didn't have rhythm. And he said they got caught by that last year at some point when they had a lot of guys coming back and they threw them all out there at the same time and things fell apart. So I think this kind of graduated reintegration is not a bad thing. We talk about minutes, and especially a guy like Scotty coming back. And Scotty wasn't 100%. I saw a couple times where he was kind of sprinting up the far side of the court from our radio broadcast location. It looked like he wasn't quite as full and free in terms of his gait.
We've seen him roll that ankle like 3 times.
And then this was a knee. So I don't have a problem with what Nick Nurse did. And I don't think it's a big deal about, well, so-and-so didn't start. Or I just think he's got so many options and so many things that he can do, Nick. Players have to get used to that. I mean, his loyalty is to winning. It's not to an agent or a contract or whatever. He's trying to win. And so for me, it's not a big deal. Somebody asked, did you have a conversation with Gary? There was no conversation. Like, here's our matchups. Here's what we're going to do. Now, maybe he'll have a conversation another time where he'll say, look, I'm going to stick with this idea for a while, but I don't think it's a big deal about moving the starting lineup. If he does, he knows what he's doing, and he's doing it for a reason.
I was going to say, we as fans automatically defer to, oh, well, he's got an option. It's a potential contract year for Gary. How does this impact his view of Toronto? But for a coaching staff, it's about winning games right now. Do you think this is plausible?
Well, it is about winning for Nick Nurse especially. I mean, he carries all the wins and losses with him wherever he goes. So there's no doubt it's about winning. There's a few things, though. Number one, Nick's going to do what's best for the team, what's going to put them in a position to be successful. All those players buy into that. There might be some kind of questions about some things, but at the end of the day, when they hit the floor, they play hard because they trust Nick Nurse. The other thing is Scotty and Gary coming off the bench is really a benefit to them. They're playing against second-unit guys and they're starters. So that means that they've got a leg up, they've got more opportunities, and that starting unit that features Pascal and Fred, now you don't have to placate everybody in terms of sharing the basketball. Juancho's doesn't need the ball. Thad Young doesn't need the ball. Freddie and Pascal can run that starting unit, and they can do what they do. And Pascal hit the ground running, so for him to get his rhythm, he had multiple possessions where they ran it through him so that he could get going. The other thing, too, is that we should never be surprised at what Nick Nurse does. No. He's not afraid to try things, and he doesn't care about what the norm is or the trend or whatever's happening.
He dictates those.
Exactly. He has a feel for what his team does. He knows who his team is, and he knows what he wants to accomplish. And if it doesn't look the way that we see it uniformly across the NBA, he doesn't care. He's going to do what he does to win games.
In a copycat league, Nick Nurse has become innovative.
Yes.
Right? And, people look back in the finals. They say, you don't play box and one in the NBA finals. This isn't high school. He's like, why not, man? It's going to work. I'm going to win. We're going to do it. And you look around the league now. How many nights do you see teams using presses and box and ones and triangle and twos? Why? Because geez, it worked for Toronto and Nick Nurse at the highest level in the finals. Well, then why can't we try it too? There's the copycat part of the league. But I just think, as Sherm said, I'm never surprised because Nick he's a thinker. He's willing to try stuff, and here you go. That was a good win last night.
Yeah, and the other thing too is Chris Boucher has been the most consistent player off the bench for the Raptors.
Yes, hands down.
And he's doing it. He was doing it with bench players. Now you have two starters in Scotty and Gary on the floor. Well, guess what? They're going to attract all the attention.
Better looks.
That's going to open Chris Boucher up for even more opportunities that he can take advantage of. So there's a ripple effect of this. Not only the guys that are moved out of the starting lineup, but the guys in the second unit that'll have more opportunities because of those guys being there.
You know, we've watched Nick Nurse at times stay conventional. I'm not going to change this because of least disruption. And then the other side of the philosophy is, well, all my guys know what is expected, what they're supposed to do, what our system is, what our philosophy is. So then it doesn't matter who I put out there. And I think that's what we saw last night.
Yeah, and I think this is something that we've seen around the league with, reserving a high-level scorer for your second unit and something that the Raptors kind of shied away from. And he's embracing it. So he's been on both sides of bucking the trend and embracing commonalities with other teams.
Well, now, we don't know if it'll stay.
And that's the big question.
We don't know. It doesn't matter. Nick's going to look at each game, have a game plan, and decide whether or not this is the way to go. But what we do know is, and this is the refreshing part of it, he's not afraid to try things. He's not afraid to do things that don't look conventional. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, he can scrap it and move on.
It's experience.
That's it.
Yeah.
All right, what are the other ripples of having Pascal out for an extended period of time? Was the growth we saw with OG Anunoby, and people started to talk about, well, this is the OG Anunoby we want to see. This is the OG Anunoby that can possibly be. And how does Pascal's return affect his ability to be a high-level offensive player? Because his resume on defense is known. He guards the best player on the opposing team every game, sure.
So just like I spoke about Chris Boucher
Yeah.
and how he's impacted by those guys being down there. Well, when you had Scotty, Gary, Pascal, Fred, and OG, sometimes by default, OG would become the fifth offensive option in that unit. But defensively, he'd be the first option because he's the guy who's going to guard people. He's going to guard multiple positions. He's relied on for so much on the defensive end. With just Pascal, Fred, and now OG in that starting unit, well, it's one or two passes away from OG getting the ball, right?
He's higher up on the pecking order.
100% offensively, so he can be featured more. And when he isn't featured, you just know because Pascal's going to attract that second defender that a shot is going to be available. And the pecking order, as you said, now it becomes Pascal, Freddie, OG. Sometimes OG might go up to number 2 based on what's happening in the game. So OG's offensive exposure gets higher when there's no Scotty Barnes in the starting lineup, when there's no Gary Trent Jr. in the starting lineup. But what we know is defensively, he has been phenomenal all season long.
To me, the way Nick manipulates the lineup, and I think a lot of people keep wanting and expecting from OG, but you have to, as Sherm said, look at the circumstances with who's on the floor and how many people have to be fed. And I think, for me, when you look at good teams that have 3 or 4 stars on them, it's about the viability of any of those stars who's maybe not the top guy stepping up at any point, right? And not just, as Nick says, not just 1 out of 5 nights, maybe 3 out of 5 nights or 4 out of 6 nights, like not once a week. Do it consistently. I think we're starting to see that with OG. Part of it was because it was by necessity. But the way Nick can manipulate the lineup, you want OG to have that ability to be the guy when it's his turn. And you think of, I just think of Golden State. There's Steph and Clay, and it's Steph most of the time, but don't sleep on Clay.
And Andrew
Wiggins now, right? I think back in the day it was Wade, LeBron, and Bosh. Everybody knew it was LeBron. But don't fall asleep on Wade or Bosh and I think that's, if you're Toronto, okay, Pascal, Fred, but don't fall asleep on OG. And I think that's what, for me, that's what I'm looking for it to be viable, for it to be long-term with OG, that any night when it's his turn or he's got it going and the other two decide to go, all right, OG, you drive tonight, that it's sustainable. And as Nick Nurse says, it can't be once a week. It has to be consistent, or it has to be the ability for it to be consistent has to be there.
And this unlocks another level for the Toronto Raptors team.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely, correct?
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The beauty too is OG's not going to force it.
Yeah.
He's gonna get it when he gets it, and when he's featured, he's gonna provide. But he's been up. He's been the guy who's been fifth option. He's been the guy who's been the first option with key guys out, and now he's finding his space now based on what Nick Nurse does in the starting lineup. So he's been great all season.
Well, Nick Nurse did address his decisions with the starting lineup, so we're going to hand you off to Nick Nurse post-game after the big win against the Cleveland Cavaliers.
For a bunch of guys who hadn't really had much time playing together, you must have been pretty pleased with the way they sort of cohesed and played defense and covered up for each other tonight?
Defense was really good, really solid, and exactly right. There was a lot of execution, a lot of help for each other, great communication out there defensively. Most of the night, it was a good defensive performance for sure. Almost start to finish. There was just one little stretch in there. We gave up about 4 straight layups when we got up. I think maybe 19 or something or 20, but really solid, really hard-working effort by our guys, all of them.
That's kind of what you got from Wancho and Thad. They sort of anchor things. They keep everybody together, kind of.
Yeah, well, I think that it was more of a case of not throwing a whole bunch of guys out there at the same time that are out of rhythm, haven't played, maybe played one game. Et cetera, just trying to keep some balance with some guys that have been kind of logging some minutes, et cetera. So that's the way we decided to do it tonight. I think we got caught on that one time a year ago, or maybe 2 years. We got a whole bunch of guys come back at once, and we threw them all out there, and we just got smacked. So we just tried to learn from that a little bit, and just try to keep some guys with some rhythm together, and it seemed to be pretty good. It seemed to be good rotations, and it was working out okay.
That first quarter you won and didn't have any offensive rebounds. Can you remember any quarter like that for you guys?
No, I saw that. I looked down at the end of the first quarter, they had 6, we had 0. We were more concerned about them getting them, but yeah, it wasn't quite what we had in mind for sure. You know, we thought we maybe have a chance to get a bunch tonight. But we kind of turned it around. I think it was maybe 5-1 in the second quarter, our favor. So it's okay.
Must be kind of nice to play like that and still, have a dominating game.
Well, our defense was so good tonight. I thought. I just thought we were just. They were searching pretty hard for the right play all throughout the possessions, and when they did make it, we'd cover it up and they'd have to do it all over again a lot of times. So it's going to take you a long ways.
We've got more from last night. The 4th member of our team, Savannah Hamilton, was present in the building, and of course, post-game, she recorded her takeaways from last night's big win.
Akil, what a night for Pascal Siakam in his comeback game. He did not miss a beat. He dropped a double-double, 18 points, 11 rebounds, taking, you think, the scoring pressure off of the rest of the guys, but the rest of the guys actually had a great night themselves. 6 Raptors ended up in double figures, and only limiting the Cavaliers to 2 players in double figures for them as well. But a big story tonight was actually the 3-point shooting, as well as the defensive pressure that the Raptors presented for the Cavs. Now, they limited the Cavs to 18% from the 3, while they were also shooting 42% from the 3 themselves, or more like 43. It's a 42 point now, details. But either way, the Raptors had a great night on both sides of the court. And another player that we have to talk about is OG Anunoby, and just his consistency. The word's getting around. He's not just a great defensive player, he's a great two-way player. And I think he put that on display as well tonight, as he had 20 points, being that rock offensively as well. You know what to expect from him as well. And I think as more guys come back, Akil, we'll have more opportunities to see how this team can mesh and find their rhythm, just how great they can be going forward. Akil.
The numbers don't lie. Pascal was ready to return to action. But talk about the pressure he put himself under. Of course, he made his comments earlier this season that he wants to be top 5 considered in this league. And you come back from an injury and you know your team needs you on a night-to-night basis. You're on a minutes restriction, 30 minutes, and you got to get your numbers if you want to keep yourself in that conversation. Talk about what you thought of his response on the court to being in that situation of minutes restriction, but still building up for that, super max potential contract and getting your team the dubs.
Well, I mean, for me, that's not pressure when you're confident that you can back it up. There's a little bit, I would call it expectations from him, right? This is what I expect. I want to be a top 5 player. I have the ability to do it. And then as for last night, knowing that he was on a minutes restriction, in a sense, that's a blessing. Okay, I can go really hard because I know that I don't have to pace myself in any way. And, you watch Pascal when he was out of the lineup. He was on the bench. He was in guys' ears. I'm sure as a student of the game, he's looking at what the team needs. He's looking at where the openings are. You get a different perspective when you can step back. And I thought he came out of the gate and knew right away things that he wanted to do. What did he make, his first 4 or 5 shots? I mean, he got right to the spots that he needed to get to, and it's like, I'm getting here, and then I'm gonna review my options. If I'm open, I'm scoring. If they collapse, my guys will be open. Let's see what they're going to decide to stop.
He didn't miss a beat.
Didn't. They decided to take stuff away. Obviously, he saw, and he started scoring. And I thought that was a great start for him, a great reintegration into the lineup.
Well, they started off defending him with a smaller defender, thinking that they'd try to match up with his quickness. And Pascal not only used his quickness, but he used his size and his strength. He got to spots, and he elevated, balanced, and knocked down shots. And I think we saw this with Fred when Fred came back earlier in the season from his back injury. As soon as he hit the floor, he was game ready.
Yeah,
he didn't miss a beat. It just speaks to how much work these guys put in behind the scenes. Pascal hit the floor, and he was ready to go. He wasn't trying to lather up to get into the game. He was like, I'm taking this game. And offensively, he did an amazing job of establishing presence. The Raptors typically aren't the greatest first quarter team when it comes to coming out of those quarters with the lead. Pascal established that first quarter and helped his team get to that point. And I really think it can't be stated enough. When your best player comes back, it's not about him adjusting to the team.
No.
It's about the team adjusting to him. Pascal said, I'm back. This is what I do. I'm going to do it at a high level. Let's get back into position. And he did a great job of that.
I think it also speaks to the medical staff.
Shouts out to the medical staff.
And the decision, if you left it to a player, I'm ready. I'm ready to come back. And, it's kind of a running.
That injury's dangerous.
I know. It's kind of a running joke,
lingers.
right? Like Pascal on Sunday at the open house spoke, and Alex McKechnie walked by. He said, why are you laughing, Alex? I don't know if I'm back yet. Ask Alex. And
a lot of trust.
Yeah, there's a lot of trust. You protect the player from himself in that sense. If you're injured, let's wait. Let's get it healthy. Let's come back, and you're ready to go. Not come back when you think you're ready and you're really only 80%, and then you get hurt again, or you can't go full speed, or things break down, and then people are like, well, the guy's back, but he's not playing very well. No, patience is the virtue that you need there. And I give credit to the medical staff and to Pascal for working to show that, okay, I'm ready to come back, I'm 100%, and then they let him out of the gate.
No signs of any lingering effects from that injury, so we're going to take it to Pascal Siakam. We're going to hear from him, but first we're going to go behind the scenes and take a look at this open gym moment from Pascal's big night back against the Cavs.
I don't know. Am I back? I don't know. I guess we'll see. Why does it look like that?
Pascal's back, man. Tired of running around. He can do it. He can get all those rebounds. He can pass. He can shoot. Get layups. What did I not say? He can do all that. I'm gonna sit back in the back and collect the rest.
How'd that feel getting back out there?
Feels good. Feels good. Just obviously missed it, so excited to be back. Just playing basketball.
Did it feel like it didn't look like any rust, but did it feel like there was any there?
I mean, yeah, I feel like, again, I gotta get my legs under me. Like, obviously, which is expected. Not being able to play at that speed, and the game is different. Like I've been I've been working, but it's different, just game speed and all that, and be able to sustain it for a long time, and yeah, like I felt like I did okay, and I gotta continue to get better, and just again, once I get my legs under me, I can kind of provide a little bit more, but yeah, like just good to be out there.
That first half in particular, it looked like that Brooklyn game where like the ball wasn't even hitting the rim; it was just straight in.
Did?
It did.
Yeah, no, obviously, like I think the biggest thing is like when you come back from an injury, it's like like your legs and getting shots and seeing the ball go through the hoop and obviously that feels good. Once you get that rhythm, but again, like these are just things that I feel like I can do anytime really, like and it wasn't nothing that's like that felt like super hard or difficult or like things I had to force or anything. Like it just felt like just the game and I think that when I play like that, like it's just how it is. I just gotta sometimes gonna go in, sometimes not. But obviously I like the fight I didn't win in today.
Guys, when they're out for a while, often talk a lot about what they learned about the team watching from the bench. Is there anything you picked up on that you didn't necessarily see as well while you were on the floor for those first months?
I mean, I think that again, like, I just feel like certain things that I can just bring. Like I just bring energy to the team. I can just bring a lot of different things, and seeing when guys are kind of get going or like when they hung their heads a little bit, like just little things, like just trying to go out there and give them a little boost and everything, just encourage and maybe like sitting down, you see more of those things, and when I get to the game, it just feels like, oh man, like, oh, I saw that happen last game, and maybe I can do something, or so just little things, like nothing crazy.
You just heard from Pascal Siakam.
That was pretty
after
good.
A big night.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, stays humble, right? Stays ready. One of the commenters said he sounds like he had a bad game, right? So he's in the right frame of mind moving forward because they've got a task on their hands. The New Orleans Pelicans. Surprise, surprise, the New Orleans Pelicans sit at third in the West with a 12-8 record. I'm going to start the conversation with the Pels like this because, of course, they got the number one pick and they got Zion Williams a couple years back, and people thought this was a transcendental, generational player. Zion doesn't play more than 30 minutes a game. They've got him sitting at around 30 minutes a game, averaging something around 22 points, 7 rebounds. Is this the threshold for a guy with that type of body? Are we ever going to see a day and age where Zion logs heavy minutes like we see with our Toronto Raptors, or does he need to be kind of protected against what could happen with his body?
Well, I would say based on his history, he needs to be protected. Guys who get injured that often, and their game is predicated on a high level of athleticism, you got to be careful with them, especially when they're going to be your franchise. I mean, Blake Griffin, to me, had a similar body type and had that similar explosion when it came to playing above the rim. And his fall was precipitous. Once he got injured and he kept getting injured, he couldn't play that way anymore. And Zion came into the league being injured. So there's always a concern. But when the kid plays, he's special, man. He's a special player, and we look at him athletically, but he's learning how to play. He's becoming a better passer. He's becoming a better decision maker, handling the ball. He's growing. He's just not on the floor enough. You know what I mean? And that's the balance that New Orleans is going to have to strike because he gets injured so often. But he's worth the investment because when he's on the floor, he's a game changer.
I think it speaks to the Pelicans organization and the fact that when he's not in the lineup, and I think back to Toronto in the championship year, when Kawhi wasn't in the lineup, we still had an identity and a style of play that made and the talent to make the team successful. I mean, Willie Green has done an unbelievable job there. They started off last year 1-12 and ended up pushing right into the playoffs and forcing a good team to really have to knock them out. So I give, David Griffin, Willie Green, the whole organization, all of those people, a lot of credit. As for Zion Williamson, Sherm's right. When he's on the floor, he's must-see TV. He's a guy that he can take you out of your seat, and his game is improving. I mean, there are little things that he does, the little subtleties of the game when you watch that you compare him to his first year in the league and where he is now. that stuff has come around. So obviously when he's not in the lineup, they're working with him. Film, trends, all of those things. So I'm looking forward to the game on Wednesday night between Toronto and New Orleans.
Now, you mentioned Willie Green. Is this kind of his vision? Does he understand that he's not going to be able to play through his superstar? Because if you start to look at how they're using him, the beginning of the season through the first 8 games, he's getting about 18 shots a game. You'd expect him to get around 20. But ever since probably before this OKC game, he was averaging in the last few games about 11 shots a game. And they're kind of leaning into the three-point shot more. And even though they're a high-scoring team, one of the top 5 scoring teams in the league, is his vision of this team to kind of have an identity that doesn't center around Zion, which would be odd for a team that has a number 1 pick that is so good?
Well, Brandon Ingram's pretty good too.
Yep.
CJ McCollum is very good too. So they have options. And I think Coach Green understands that we need guys to play regardless if Zion is there.
Yeah.
So how do we implement that?
You can't bank on it.
100%. So we make sure that these guys are constantly being accountable for their role in success. When you do that, guys get better. They answer the call. Ingram's going to get better. He's continuing to get better. McCollum, to me, is one of the most underrated players in this league. And, when you make a connection to the Raptors, they got Kawhi. They already had, before Kawhi got there, an Eastern Conference contending team for the finals. Then they added Marc Gasol, and it becomes an understated move because that veteran presence, that know-how when it comes to winning, just tips the balance in your favor. And the same thing C.J. McCollum is doing for New Orleans. The kid, he knows how to play. He's a leader. He gets respect in the locker room right away. And guess what? He can make those plays when you need them to be made offensively. So C.J. McCollum's implementation into this team is huge, and I think Ingram and Williamson are going to grow. And the pieces around them, this kid Alvarado, man, he's a bleep disturber.
Grand Theft Alvarado.
He's a disruptor, man. He's fun to watch, but he's irritant, and they love him, and they've got some pieces around those guys.
Hey, look at the other guys. Herb Jones, Trey. They do have pieces. And again, I go back to when the Raptors had Kawhi, they played one way when he was in the lineup. And when he wasn't in the lineup, not that they played totally differently, but they knew what they had to do without him. And I think the Pelicans are the same way. I really do. You look at how many games Zion has missed, how much he's out of the lineup, how much for them there's an unpredictability. We love him, but if we don't have them, we can't stop the show. We've got to have other options. And I just think New Orleans has developed that. And I'm not surprised at all. Listen, there's another guy that used to be in Toronto here, Jonas Valanciunas.
That's what I'm going to talk about next.
If you want to play a little more traditionally, you got a 7-footer down there that you can throw the ball to and play inside out or just let him go to work. He's a rebounding machine. So I just think they've got all the parts, all the pieces right now, and they don't have to worry about, we can only play this way because of these people in our lineup.
All right, and you mentioned Jonas Valanciunas and the fact that he's 6'11", 7 feet tall, traditional big. But in Toronto, we saw him make 43s. Last year, he made 57 as a member of the Pelicans, a career 36% three-point shooter. This year, 44%. Talk about the growth there and the fact that, as sure as you could throw the ball to him inside, but there's another wrinkle that kind of changes the game.
I mean, that's the way the game has gone. Sherm and I did the game in Cleveland on the radio when Jonas hit his first 3 as the Raptor. Yeah. And he stood out there and he put the ball over his head and people were like, no, like, what do you do? No. And he knocks it down and he looked like, hey, I can do this. Everybody was celebrating and he kind of gave a little celebration, but it's like, I see the way the league is going.
Shades of Brook Lopez.
I need to be able to do this. Exactly. That's a great comparison. And I just think Jonas has grown. His game has grown so much that, he's not going to be shaking people in his bag and pulling up for 3 off the dribble. But as a standstill 3-point shooter, if you get him the ball, he's going to let it go. And he's got a chance to make it. So, again, I just think he's expanding his game, and it gives the Pelicans another way to play.
Yeah, Jonas, while he was in Toronto, did a very good job of continuing to work on his speed, his quickness, his agility, his movement laterally, all those elements, because he came into the NBA as a big guy who was more of a plotter.
The Raptors brought him to a running coach at one point.
He was more of a plotter, and he's worked hard and added the 3-point game. So this is, to both your points, the ability to morph into what he needs to be so he doesn't become a dinosaur in this league and extinct. He becomes a viable option. And because you look at even a guy like Steven Adams, who doesn't have a three-point shot, but he's so physical, he's so big, he can defend, he can rebound, he can help you. Jonas has all that stuff, but he also has that three-point shot, which to me extends a 7-footer's career who typically wouldn't be out there on the three-point line, but because he can make it, he can pull bodies away. And he still has a rebounding. He still has a defense, still has a screen setting, all the elements that you want from your traditional big.
Well, you can check out the former number 5 pick back in 2011 for the Toronto Raptors as they take on the Toronto Raptors. It's the New Orleans Pelicans and the Raptors Wednesday night. You can catch that game 8 p.m. as they're coming to you from New Orleans. That does it for our crew here inside Scotiabank Arena. I'm Akil Augustine. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back later in the week. But until then, let's go Raptors.